Would you notice if someone simply disappeared from your morning routine? Every sunrise, a cheerful whistle echoed through Maple Crest. It came from a boy on a rusty red bike, delivering newspapers and smiles to anyone who'd look up. But one morning, at the Grand White House on Oak Ridge Lane, there was no smile. No "good morning, dear." Just a half-open door and a silence too heavy to ignore. Noah had every reason to keep pedaling, but something made him stop. What he didn't know was that behind that door lay a moment that would test his courage and open a new chapter not just for her, but for him too. Before we dive in, have you ever followed your gut instinct and saved the day? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of quiet heroes and second chances. A pale winter sun rested lazily over Maple Crest, a quiet, upper-class neighborhood where snow blanketed each lawn like a postcard scene. Chimneys puffed thin columns of smoke into the brittle morning air, and sidewalks glistened with icy frost. It was the kind of place where time moved slowly, and no one expected surprises. But every morning at exactly 6:45, something joyful broke the stillness. A cheerful, off-key whistle echoing down the street. It belonged to Noah, a 13-year-old boy with tousled dark brown hair, hazel eyes too wise for his age, and a frame that looked like it hadn't outgrown the jacket he wore for 2 winters straight. He was small and wiry, with long limbs and quick hands, perfect for tossing newspapers from his red bicycle. Noah had no family. He lived at a local shelter that let him stay in exchange for cleaning chores, and he used every dime from his paper route to save for school supplies and hot lunches. But he never let the weight of the world dampen his spirit. He whistled like it was a love song to life, as if someone, somewhere, needed that little sound to believe the world was still good. He had a soft spot for the elderly, especially those who waited on their porches to wave at him each morning. None more so than Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, the grand widow who lived at the corner of Oak Ridge Lane. At 82, she was dignified and silver-haired, with a sharp wit and even sharper cheekbones. She once ran one of the largest real estate firms in the state, but had stepped back after a stroke a few years ago. Her children, 2 sons and a daughter, were wealthy and busy, living in cities far away. Eleanor now lived alone in a white-pillared estate, cared for by a kind but overworked housekeeper named Marta. Every morning, without fail, Eleanor would stand at the grand wooden door in her thick robe and pink slippers and greet Noah with a regal nod and a folded $1 tip. "On time, as always," she would say. And Noah would smile and salute her with a rolled newspaper like a soldier reporting for duty. But this morning, something was off. No porch light, no Eleanor. The door was slightly ajar, and in the snow near the step, the newspaper from yesterday, still untouched. Noah blinked. That had never happened before. Noah's heart skipped a beat. He stood still for a moment, listening. The only sound was the crunch of snow under his worn-out boots as he stepped cautiously toward the door. He called out, softly at first, "Mrs. Whitmore?" No answer. He pushed the heavy oak door open farther. It creaked on its hinges like it hadn't moved in hours. The warmth of the grand foyer greeted him, but something was wrong. The air felt stale, as if the house had been holding its breath. The chandelier overhead flickered weakly. Noah clutched the newspaper tighter, his fingers trembling. He took a few steps inside, his eyes darting across the marble floor, the grand staircase, the portraits of a family that once filled this house with noise. But now, silence. Then he saw it. A soft groan, a shadow in the kitchen. Noah rushed in, and his breath caught in his chest. Eleanor Whitmore, once poised and regal, lay crumpled on the cold tile, her silk robe twisted beneath her, one hand gripping her chest. Her silver hair spread like a halo around her pale face, lips slightly parted, eyes unfocused and glassy. For a split second, Noah froze. The room swam around him. He had never seen someone so still, so fragile. But instinct snapped him back. He dropped the newspaper and slid to her side. "It's Noah," he whispered, kneeling beside her. "I'm here." Her eyes barely flickered. Was that recognition? He remembered the emergency number posted on the shelter's wall. With shaky hands, he pulled out the old flip phone the shelter director had let him borrow, just for safety. 911. He spoke fast, clear, like he'd practiced. He told them the address. He begged them to come quickly. Then, kneeling there in the stillness, he gently lifted her head and rested it on his bunched-up coat. Her breathing was shallow, but it was there. He folded one of her hands into both of his, as if lending her warmth from his small, calloused palms. The minutes stretched painfully. Then, a distant sound. Sirens, growing louder. But as Noah sat by Eleanor's side, one thought haunted him. What if he had come 10 minutes later? The early morning light seeped through the high kitchen window, casting a pale glow across the cold tiles. The refrigerator hummed faintly. And there, crumpled at the base of the marble counter, was Eleanor Whitmore. Her thin fingers grasped weakly at the leg of a chair, her once commanding voice now reduced to a breathless whisper. Her lips moved, but no words came out, only air, only effort. Her silk robe was soaked at the sleeve with tea from the shattered cup on the floor. Her silver hair clung to her temple, damp with sweat. Her proud frame trembled against the chill of the tile. Noah stood frozen for a second. His breath hitched in his throat, but he didn't scream. He didn't run. He remembered. He dropped his satchel, dropped to his knees. His mind raced back to the free health workshop he had snuck into at school the previous fall, the one about strokes. He couldn't remember everything, but one thing he knew. Act fast. He reached into the nearest drawer, pulled out a dish towel, folded it gently, and placed it under Eleanor's head. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You're not alone." She blinked slowly, as if trying to place him. But her grip on the chair leg loosened. Her body sagged. Noah dialed 911 again, this time speaking slower, clearer. His voice, though high and young, was steady. He described the symptoms. He gave the address. Then he hung up and moved fast. He rolled Eleanor gently to her side, the recovery position. He found a throw blanket draped over the armchair in the next room and wrapped it around her. He checked her pulse. Still faint, but there. He sat beside her, his hands cold against hers. "Bak Hong Sao Ju," he murmured instinctively in Vietnamese, words he remembered from the old woman next door at the shelter. "You're going to be all right. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the sirens grew louder, slicing through the stillness. Inside, Noah held on. To her, to hope, to the strange stillness between life and death. The private jet from Boston touched down just after dawn. Another arrived from Austin 2 hours later, followed by one from Seattle. One by one, the children of Eleanor Whitmore, now adults with silver in their hair and assistants glued to their phones, descended upon Greenridge General Hospital like a flurry of sharp suits and hurried footsteps. There was Victor, the eldest, a stern-faced tech CEO with ash-gray temples and a voice that rarely rose above a boardroom whisper. Behind him came Caroline, stylish even in crisis, with pearl earrings that caught the fluorescent light and a phone pressed permanently to her ear. And last, Michael, the youngest, still boyish at 50, an architect with tired eyes and a scarf he didn't bother to take off. They stood outside the ICU in stunned silence. A nurse had just informed them, "Her condition is stable because someone found her in time." "Who?" Victor asked, brows furrowed. "The maid?" The nurse shook her head. "A paperboy. A kid, really. He saved her life." Their silence grew heavier, shaped by both guilt and awe. Not one of them had spoken to their mother in over a week. Not one had known she was alone that morning. Later that afternoon, a nurse escorted a thin boy into the family room. Noah. His shoes were still damp from the snow. His coat swallowed his narrow shoulders, and in his hand, he clutched a folded newspaper, today's edition, creased from his grip. 3 pairs of eyes turned to him, all at once. He had never seen people like them. The glow of money in their eyes, the weight of distant worlds in their posture. He suddenly felt very small. His throat tightened. I just... She didn't come out for her paper, he stammered. Michael stepped forward first, kneeling slightly to meet the boy's eye level. "You were the only one who noticed," he said quietly. Noah blinked, unsure if he was in trouble or about to cry. Victor, who hadn't moved an inch, finally spoke. "What's your name?" The boy swallowed. "Noah." Outside, the snow began falling again. Slow, quiet, and full of meaning. The days passed slowly but gently inside the quiet recovery wing of Greenridge General. Eleanor Whitmore, once the commanding matriarch of business luncheons and charity galas, now lay under soft beige blankets, her silver hair neatly brushed, her eyes gentler, quieter. Each morning, a nurse would adjust her pillows, open the curtains to the garden beyond, and ask, "Did you rest well, ma'am?" Eleanor would always smile faintly. "I dreamed of birdsong," she would say. But she meant something else entirely. A sound that had carried her through the silence long before her collapse. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through the blinds, she turned to her children, seated in expensive silence at the foot of her bed, and said, "You know what pulled me out of the fog that morning?" Victor raised an eyebrow. Caroline stopped scrolling her phone. "It was his whistle," Eleanor whispered. "That boy, Noah. Every morning I waited to hear his cheerful tune outside my window. It reminded me I still existed, that someone, even unknowingly, noticed I was alive." For a moment, no one spoke. And then Michael, who had been sitting closest, leaned forward and took her hand. "He didn't just save your life that morning," he murmured. "He's been saving your spirit all along." That evening, the decision was unanimous. Victor drafted the paperwork. Caroline called her lawyer. Michael made the call. 2 days later, Noah arrived at the estate, not with newspapers, but with a duffel bag of worn clothes and a heart full of questions. He stood in the grand foyer, dwarfed by chandeliers and marble floors. Eleanor, in her wheelchair now, was waiting by the fireplace. "This house has too many rooms and not enough laughter," she said. "Will you help me change that, dear?" Noah blinked, unsure if he was dreaming. "You want me to live here?" "Yes," Caroline said softly, walking down the stairs. "You're family now, and we'd like to take care of your studies, your food, your future, all of it." Noah's hands trembled as he clutched the fraying strap of his duffel. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Eleanor held out her hand. "Welcome home, Noah." Autumn had returned to Greenridge with gold-tinted leaves and a gentler wind. Years had passed, but some things remained. Like the soft whistle that drifted through the neighborhood each morning. Only now it came not from a rusted bicycle, but from a sleek, modest sedan gliding down Sycamore Lane. Noah Whitmore, for he now carried the Whitmore name with quiet pride, was no longer the boy with tattered shoes and ink-stained fingers. At 17, he stood taller, his frame lean but confident, hair neatly trimmed, voice steady. There was a calm thoughtfulness to the way he moved, a natural grace born not of wealth, but of gratitude. He was in his final year at St. Augustine Preparatory School, a place once unthinkable for a boy like him, now where he flourished. But Noah had never forgotten. One evening, sitting beside Eleanor near the fire, he asked softly, "Why me? Why did you choose to change my life?" Eleanor, frailer now but still sharp in spirit, took a long breath. "Because kindness should echo, Noah, and yours saved me before you even knew my name." That was the moment the idea bloomed. Not charity, not pity, but a foundation built on second chances, a way to turn one act of compassion into a lifetime of opportunities for others. They named it the Whistlelight Foundation, after the very tune that first tethered their fates. The mission: to support underprivileged youth who displayed resilience, honesty, and initiative. The traits Noah had embodied without even trying. Scholarships, mentorships, housing support, a beacon for children who, like Noah once was, stood at the edge of fading light. Noah was appointed as the Foundation's first youth director. He still delivered inspiration each morning, not in folded newspapers, but in letters of acceptance, thank you notes, and stories of hope. That fall, as he stood before a packed auditorium of sponsors and donors, Noah's voice didn't shake. "I was just a boy with a bag of newspapers, but someone believed in me, and now I want to believe in them." Outside, the whistle sounded again. Same melody, new beginning. The morning sun stretched gently over Greenridge, casting a soft golden hue on the brick houses that lined Sycamore Lane. The air was crisp, yet calm, with only the occasional rustle of leaves as the wind passed. At number 18, the front porch light still flickered faintly, a small beacon of warmth that had guided many hearts home. Eleanor Whitmore, now in her late 80s, sat bundled in a woolen shawl by the doorway. Time had drawn gentle lines across her face, but her eyes remained bright, alert with quiet pride. Her body moved slower, her breath a little shorter, but her spirit, her unmistakable elegance, endured. Each morning, she sat by the door, not for routine, but ritual, a moment she cherished above all else. From down the street, the sound arrived before the boy. A whistle, soft, lilting, familiar. Her eyes searched the lane. And there he was. Noah Whitmore, now 22, walked toward the house in a fitted navy suit, a conference lanyard still swinging from his neck. He looked older, certainly, broader shoulders, a steadier gait. But the sparkle in his eyes had not dimmed. Just hours ago, he had stood before the National Philanthropy Conference as its youngest ever keynote speaker, delivering a speech on dignity, compassion, and the power of one small act. But it was this moment, this porch, this return, that meant the most. He stopped at the bottom step and whistled the same tune he had years ago, the one that once sliced through cold dawns and silent grief. Eleanor chuckled softly, her smile radiant. "That sound," she whispered, voice thin but steady, "saved my life once." Noah climbed the steps, knelt beside her, his hand gently resting atop hers. She looked into his eyes. "And now, my boy, you use it to save so many others." The wind carried the tune down the street once more, a melody born from one morning's kindness, now echoing into the world. Some say it was just luck. Others believe it was fate. But those who've ever stood at the edge of despair and were pulled back by an unexpected hand, they know better. Perhaps God doesn't always speak with thunder. Sometimes he whispers, through a whistle on a quiet morning, through a boy with a newspaper bag, through you. If this story moved you, let kindness echo further. Share it. Comment below about a moment when someone's small act changed your day. And subscribe, because tomorrow we'll meet another miracle waiting to be told. May the Lord bless you, keep you safe, and remind you daily, your smallest act could be someone's saving grace.